Well, may you always
That
speak
said,
truth.
like, this is probably my best performance, you know? And
Well,
that it's been like 7, 8 years that I feel like I've been handing in really, really committed, top of the line performances. And it's important to say it out loud because the discipline and the work ethic I'm bringing to these things, I don't want people to take for granted. I don't want to take for granted. This is really some top level.
Amazing.
Yes. Okay. Well, Dennis, this is I wouldn't. Well, on in halftime chats, I think 99% of my guests are mainly from the music background. But every now and then, it's always good to be able to celebrate talent in different spheres. And I mean, he's known mainly as AK, but I'll okay. I'm not gonna try and butcher his
You're
name.
not
Just
going to
say wait,
butcher my name.
please.
You're not going to try and butcher my name, but that's all good. But you should. I mean, we are probably kind of neighbors because I'm sure you're
Yeah,
from Alex, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
Akemji. So a lot of people think
Akenji,
I'm Igbo,
Akenji.
but I'm not. I'm
No, that
not.
looks Yoruba though.
No, no. Some people say Igbo. Some people say Igbo, but no. My name's Akemji Ndifornyen.
Okay, where is that from?
Cameroon.
Oh,
Yeah, so we're neighbors.
I did think you were Nigerian. I
Okay.
would not, yeah, I did think you're Nigerian.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Akenji is here. And I think one of the things that's starting this podcast during the lockdown as a way of one trying to talk to people of color around mental health
Yeah.
indirectly, and in
Yeah.
fact, the interviewing artists were to say even celebrities are struggling, and so giving everyone else hope. So it was going to be good to be able to talk to you about your background, and I see a guitar at the back, and it looked like a turntable as well. So
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sure
not
that.
staged. It's not staged. This is my study. It's definitely not staged. So in front of me, there's books, there's shelves of books, comics, and like my turntables and my guitars in back of me because this is also where I make music. So
Okay.
yeah, this is
Okay.
my little man cave of
Okay.
creativity.
And you got have you seen the Being Eddie then? Can I see the Beverly Hills Cop at the back? Okay, you haven't yet seen that.
Have I seen Being Eddie? Of course I have,
Oh, you
man.
see it? Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
that's like one of my heroes. Like that's
okay.
genuinely like there's two people like that creatively like have an impact on my life. Is like Eddie Murphy on one hand and Michael Jackson on the other. Those
Oh,
are the two
wow.
kind of like
Wow,
North Stars creative, you know.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as I always start, because international audience, I always like my guests to introduce where they were born and raised, and so we can start to just understand your history from there.
Of course. So I was born in East London, in Hackney, in Homerton Hospital, uh,
Okay.
in, in the late 80s, in 86. And yeah, I was raised in Hackney and grew up around here. Obviously, I've traveled the world, but like I'm a Hackney kid. So yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of our guests are Americans, so they say, "Oh, yeah, I'm from Brooklyn and Queens
Yeah.
and stuff." So, how would you describe Hackney, East London, to people from other parts of the world who?
Yeah, who wouldn't know? Well,
Mm,
I mean, what's beautiful at the moment culturally is there's this lovely bridge with our American cousins where they're a lot more aware of stuff than they
mm,
would be. So Hackney is a very densely populated, like with West African, West Indian. There's a lot of Greek Cypriot kind of culture in there. And you know, the comparables would be the Brooklyns and the Queenses and the those types of things from our New Yorkers just in the same way as they see Brixton and Peckham being like
mm.
meccas of like black and ethnic UK culture. Hackney is one of them, you know. I mean it's similar to Brooklyn in the sense that it's been through crazy regeneration and gentrification,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. So like if someone was cryogenically frozen in the 80s and they came back now to Hackney, they'd be like they'll be in their shell suit, like where am I? Like what is this? You know, lattes and all this type of stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
But I
yeah.
don't, you know, but so that I hope that's a hefty like a sensible a comp to what Hackney is to my American cousins. So think Brooklyn, think Queens, think that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I can attest that, growing up Hackney, I grew up in Liverpool, born and raised in Liverpool, but
Oh
you hear about Hackney, you hear about Brixton, you hear about Peckham.
yeah.
A lot of Nigerians flood to Peckham in the 80s.
Big time. It's one of the capitals. It's like unofficial Lagos. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you get your serious spots and everything. And then they then ventured out into Woolwich and Thamesmead. So they've got the
Exactly. And I've got family there. I've got family Woolwich and Thamesmead. That was one point. And then another point, a lot of people from Hackney moved to the Dagenhams and the
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Grays and all
yeah,
that
no,
type.
Essex
So,
as well.
exactly. So if you were South Base, you would move to Plumstead, Woolwich, and
Mm.
Thamesmead. If you were East Base, like Hackney, you would move to Dagenham, Gray, and all those kinds of places.
What was it like growing up in Hackney as a kid, especially, in London?
It was amazing, man. I mean, I lived on an estate called Rhodes Estate, which is right opposite from Holly Street, which is, a notorious estate
Mm.
in Hackney. So it was myself, my mum, my dad, my two big sisters, and we were in this kind of on a council estate, but we felt like we felt like the rich kids on the council estate.
Wow.
It's really weird. Like come home and you're in kind of a middle class Cameroonian household on the center of an estate. You're getting three-course meals and just sort of like my mum and dad like really kind of just made sure we weren't governed by our surroundings because Hackney in the 80s and early 90s was a very working class and rough in a lot of ways.
Mm.
So my mum and dad, they worked all the hours that God could send, and I was always doing an activity. So whether I was terrible at it, I was doing it. So occasionally on Saturdays I'd be riding my bike around the estate or whatever, but for the most part, if there was an activity, I'd be doing it. So whether that's like playing football, terrible at that. I remember when Mighty Ducks, the hockey,
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. The
I
Disney
was
stuff, yeah.
playing hockey. I joined a hockey team, and then it just so happened that like two things stuck: music stuck, and acting stuck. And so on Saturdays I would go to Pollyanna drama school in Wapping, and on Wednesdays I had guitar lessons from like the age of like 9, 10. And I
Wow.
don't know where my parents found the money, but they made it happen, to do all these different things. So I was active. But yeah, so Hackney, my formative years was an interesting wild place, but I had a lot of fun, and and also my parents were very well known in the community as well. As a side note, my parents ran pubs as well.
Pubs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's like a thing. My dad was like a well-known like pub owner in the area. He passed away
Okay.
years ago, but they own pubs. So that's like a whole separate part of my life. So they had like well-known pub in Hackney that like where we all West African, West Indian, Irish, everyone would flock there. They do
Mm.
grilled fish with plantain or plantain, whichever
Mm.
plan you fall on.
Plantain.
Yeah, yeah, okay, there we go, there we go. And it was like a cultural hub in Hackney. So there was that part of like my life as well. So my dad was very well known in the area. So life was when I look back at it, I think, oh, it's a really fun childhood. It was a really, really fun childhood.
The one thing you mentioned that that we can't take for granted that you mentioned your parents,
Mm,
and so many people that I've spoken to would always talk about, yeah, yeah, my mom's and my dad was gone,
mm,
and how that then makes a difference being raised by mom and dad
yeah,
in any generation,
yeah,
especially back in the 80s where
yeah.
black youths were, with the issues with the police.
Of course,
Did
yeah.
you notice it at the time, actually having mom and dad at home, how much of a difference it made in how you grew up?
100%. And I was always sort of, however subtly or overtly, my dad he always spoke to me and told me certain things. He'd always make me aware of like how certain things worked and why certain things were happening. And those things that weren't overt, I kind of got like there was discipline in our household. You're in an African household, so it's there's certain things that just aren't tolerated, and the village gets to discipline you. And that village was actually very multi diaspora, because my dad had a lot of friends from the Caribbean. And so I still see a lot of them now. They're like uncles to me. I see a lot of them now. So if I'm on the street, I will cross the street and greet them.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? Like I'll cross the street, greet them. There's that type of thing. There's like discipline is meted out from not your blood relatives, but also just people who are, you know, your friends' parents, who are your uncles and aunties. And in terms of just an awareness of like of you know, my parents always made me aware of like you know, some of the dangers in the world, and like paths that you could go down, and what, you know. And honestly, I just didn't want to displease my parents.
Wow.
I wanted to make them proud. And but I was always keenly aware that I was gifted in that my mum and dad were together. And I had that to come home to, just that anchoring. And they could, you know, there's a tag team there. So one person's good cop, one person's bad cop, and they'll switch it when they need to. But just that thing is that anchored me so much, just the knowledge that mum and dad were around, and that they were the people that ultimately on earth I had to impress.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, everything, the buck stopped with them.
Yeah. Wow. So the fact that you were doing your acting and then you were playing guitar, was it something that you had the talent, or they put you in that to keep you off the streets, as they would say? So what was the
I can tell you this, there was never any chance that I was gonna be running around on the streets doing anything. It's just not in my kind of, it just didn't interest me. There's something, I don't like big groups. I don't really like big groups. I like, see this room. I spend most of my time in this room. I have a whole separate house there, but I spend most of the time in the room in quiet, like reading or whatever. That's just me. So there was never any chance that, like, if given the choice of like reading a book or reading a magazine or listening to a piece of music and like running around on my estate. Yeah, I'd do a little bit of that, but like I'd want to come home and there was always something more interesting to do. And I was very curious and I wanted to learn. So with, you know, we had a lot of VHSs when we were younger. And for some reason, and I've said this before, mum and dad in particular, allowed me to watch quite, you know, a lot of things quite young. Like, so I was watching Beverly Hills Cop 1. That's why that thing's in the background. I can quote that thing back to front, because from the age of 4, I was watching that. Literally from the age of 4, I was watching that. So you weren't going to tell me there was no way you would tell me that I was not somehow going to be in the screen somehow, you know? So there was that. But then there was also Michael Jackson on the other hand. There was just the music. There was just that thing. And I was like, wow, this music thing is incredible. And I remember my Uncle Christopher, like one of my dad's cousins, he was the music man of the family. So he would, in the old days, he would go to like the HMVs and the Virgin Mega stores. He was like, oh, Uncle Christopher knows the good music. So he'd always have like a good CD or something like that. And I remember, he doesn't even know this himself, but like I borrowed his copy of Dangerous.
Wow.
So I would have been about 5. I would have been, about 5 when that came out. And I remember borrowing it on tape. He had it, and I don't think he ever got it back. And I was like, I just want to be, whatever this is, I just love it. I don't know why I love it, but I just love it. So when I said to my parents, like, I remember one day I was just in Dalston. There's a really famous music shop on Dalston Lane. Run by a family. It's been there for like 70 years or something like that. And we're walking past, and one day I said, oh, Mum, I really want a guitar. So she was like, okay, yeah, let's get you a guitar. So we walked there, and I remember I got myself my first little Spanish classical guitar, and a nice like rainbow strap and all of this type of stuff. And I'll never forget that day. And then there was just a list of kind of phone numbers of guitar tutors on the wall. And then we just picked one out, a guy called Robert Hayes. And he taught on Holly Street. So my mum on a Wednesday would walk me to Holly Street, because it was still a bit rough in those days. and I'd go do guitar for an hour. And that was just my mum and dad being like, he has an interest in it. He's got an aptitude. Let's
Wow.
try and encourage this. And it's like, and I'm fortunate and lucky because I know a lot of people don't have that. My mum and dad, I think they were just like, whatever we need to do, we're going to try and make it happen, or make, get this young inquisitive man, get his ambitions and his passions fed.
And for people to know that, my parents, they came to the UK in the 60s from Nigeria. That isn't typical from that first generation of parents, that sense of,
It
yeah,
really,
you want to learn
yeah,
guitar,
it
no
isn't.
problem. That wasn't that. I'm like,
It really isn't. It really isn't. And my parents are interesting. They're just really interesting. Like it's this dichotomy of my mum being really quiet and my dad being a showman. So I kind of have that in me. Like it's just this couldn't be more different in terms of their thing. But one thing they are really good at is like hospitality and entertaining and looking after people. But like, so yeah, in that sense, it's like, oh, they're Cameroonians who came in the 70s, for a better life and all that good stuff. At that time, the kind of, especially if you had kids, you're there to study and do the academics and all that type of stuff, even from a young age. So all this kind of, you want to be gallivanting and all that type of stuff.
gallivanting.
Yeah, it's more commonplace now for like people who are like maybe 10, 15 years younger than me because their parents were born here,
Yeah.
and they actually see the potential fruits of it because they realize, oh, it's a lucrative thing. And that's the bottom line with parents, particularly African parents, is just the
Yeah.
understanding that like you're going to make money from this.
Yeah.
And when they can see yields of millions
Yeah.
from things, then they're like, oh, be an entertainer, just that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't commonplace. And I think just I think parents know their children, and I was never going to do anything else. I was really good at school. Like, I mean, you could do your research. I was a very, very, very good student, like very good. Every school I went to, like from primary school to secondary school, like I was very good at school. But I also knew that like I can always come back to academics, but I want to do my creatives, like the creative side of me is what interests me. And I suppose I've never, like, one of my really early things that I remember, we had like a family party, like a lot of the Northwest Cameroonian community, like there's a monthly meeting where all the different, you might be in Reading, Guildford, whatever, but everyone meets up at someone's house and you have food, all that type of stuff. And I remember I'd seen something the night before on TV. It was like one of those hidden camera things where they were exposing he was like a builder, but he was a dodgy builder.
Okay.
And it was one of those things they used to do on ITV around, it was on a Sunday, and it was maybe around the time that you might have had You've Been Framed. So for those international listeners, You've Been Framed is like a video camera show. It's kind of like early YouTube where you put funny videos on and they present. So on Sunday nights on ITV, you'd either have a detective show or you'd have something like You've Been Framed or some kind of variety thing. But this particular thing that I saw was on one of those, like a crime show where they were showing like dodgy builders. And I remember this guy did this thing where he was fixing someone's house. He was a plumber, and like he peed in the sink.
Oh.
And he peed in the sink, and they obviously blurred that out. But I remember reenacting that to the people at the party. And my dad had seen it. I think my dad had watched the thing with me. So he had seen it, and I'd mimicked this guy, I'd mimicked the thing. And then my dad was like, looking back, I go, oh, this is like a parent understanding that you're good at this. Like, I'm a pretty good mimic. Like, if I hear something, I see something, I can do it. Like, if I hear someone's voice, I can do it, even in the cadence or whatever, So I think my dad and my mom understood from young that, oh, this guy has this thing that he enjoys doing. But then I suppose they were also conflicted a little bit in the sense that I was a good student. I was a really, really good student in primary school, very good at English, very good at art stuff and I was a good student. So I think maybe part of them wanted me to go off to uni eventually, but they always knew that I was going to be doing to some degree. Yes.
It's different in America, and I'll always bring the contrast because
Mm.
you've got Eddie Murphy, Denzel, you've got a plethora of
Mm.
black talent and shows. You had Martin, you had BET, so there was an avenue. Apart from Lenny Henry,
I was going to say Lenny. Yeah.
apart from Lenny Henry, how many others were you able to look on British television and say, okay,
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that because now we have so many. And I know
yeah,
that like the generation behind me will, there's obviously a conversation about we can do so much better and we can go further. And I end up sounding like a grandpa to a lot of people just because I've been around long enough to say, like, do you know what it was like before? Like, do you know how good we have it? Where like he's got a show, she's got a show, this one's got a show, that one's got a show over here, and they're
Mm,
speaking in our own accents. The early 90s, it was yeah, Lenny Henry was like the apex of
yeah.
like black talent in this country. And salutes to him and all that he did. And you obviously had the real McCoy, which was trailblazing for so many different reasons and has a real kind of spot in people's hearts because it was like there was several of us. Whereas Lenny Henry's shows were just him. It
Mm.
was like it was just him surrounded maybe by other people. Apart from it, yeah, he had a sitcom, the Lenny Henry Show, but I'm talking about the Lenny Henry variety
The
shows or
variety
whatever.
shows, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But Real McCoy was particularly the later series because I know like the first series had like Mira Sayal, so it was like this multicultural like
Mm.
Asian and Afro Caribbean thing. But the later series, what the Real McCoy is remembered for is actually its black talent more
Mm.
than anything. So Robbie G, Llewellyn Gideon. Uh, Curtis Walker, Eddie Nestor, all these legends. So that was one. And so whenever that would come on, everyone would run around the TV show. And so like for our American listeners, that would be like an In Living Color kind of thing.
Mm.
That would be the Harrison, but very British and very topical with a lot of impressions and all this type of stuff and these amazing performers. And there were some somewhat mythic figures to us all, even though I was really on the younger side of everything. And then you had a show called Desmond's,
Yeah,
which
Desmond, yeah.
was like it was on Channel 4, and
Mm.
Desmond's was about a Guyanese barber who come
Mm.
in during the Windrush era. It was called Desmond's that he played. Norman Beaton was the actor's name, rest his soul, and he played the titular Desmond, who had a barbershop and you'd have a motley crew of characters who came in.
Mm.
So very much the comp would be barbershop.
Mm.
It's basically barbershop before barbershop. And you had these different characters. You had Matthew, the educated, I think he was Ghanaian, I think. I don't want to mess it up. I don't want anyone to shoot me for that. And then you had Pork Pie. You had Lee, the Peckham Prince, played by Robbie G, had all these amazing characters. And that was like because there was so few and far between in terms of like black representation on TV, everyone would run to the
Mm.
TV. And there was this phenomenon of like what I call mum, there's a black person on TV. Like that was the thing that we had. That was just the thing that we had that I don't think we operated by it anymore, but the idea of black representation on TV was like when a black person was on TV, it was, Mom, there's a black person on TV. That's 30 years ago. That's 30 years ago, you
And I
know?
know that you were in you did an episode of Death in Paradise, but I always remember growing up as a kid during my time because I grew up in the 70s, Rise and Damp.
Yeah.
And
Rise and Damp with Don Warrington. So,
yeah, so he was the one main black person that I always knew growing up.
yeah. And I got to work with Don. This is before Death in Paradise. I got to
Okay.
work with him when I was 16. There was a show I did called The Grouches, which kind of comes up in the kind of annals of black British TV. It was like one of the first black sitcoms since Desmond and since Us
Okay.
Girls and all that. But Don was in it, and so it had like this intergenerational black British talent. So at the more established end, you had Don Warrington, Rising Damp. You had Rudolph Walker, played my grandpa. You had Mona Hammond, rest her soul, who played my grandma. And then you had, you know, the kind of young stars, Robbie G, Joe Martin, Luella Gideon, you know, you had Danny John Jules, you know, you had Brian Bevell, you had like those guys. Then you had the younger lot, you know, so you had Jimmy Akimbola, who's gone on to do Bel Air, and you had one of you Hero, who played my sister, and you had me. So that was like my that was like a that was actually an education for me, because I wouldn't have known. Rising Damp was before my time.
Yeah.
Having worked with Don, you get to sit around a campfire as a little kid. You shut your mouth and you listen to these stories.
Yeah.
That's why I have such a reverence for how far Black British talent and representation has come, because when you listen to these guys say like what it was like in the 70s, you're like, we don't even know we're born. We don't realize how lucky we have it. But obviously, just as a caveat, we shouldn't be content with crumbs, but you just realize that, like, wow, things have come leaps and bounds.
Yeah. Oh, so you were 16. Then how did you go from trying to get into acting to get your first break then?
So you're good at this, because that's good story weaving, because I jump around a lot.
No, it's fine. I'm a therapist.
Yeah, no, I could tell. But in terms of getting into that, like, as I said at the start, getting into the TV, I would do everything. I would do everything in primary school. I was always reading. I was always the first with the hand up. Miss, I'll read it. Miss Joseph, I'll read it. Loved reading, loved performing. And so I think there was a play in year 5. And I was maybe a box at Christmas. It was like a Christmas. And like Miss Fletcher, who wasn't actually my teacher, but she was the mum of one of my classmates. She was just like, she said to my mum, "Oh, he's got talent. He's got talent. You should put him in something." And like, in hindsight, she might have just been saying it as like polite chit chat to another parent. I don't know, but it stuck with me. And then like later that evening, we went to the Yellow Pages. Now the Yellow Pages, obviously they have the Yellow Pages in the States. Remember, went to the Yellow Pages, the directory, and started looking up which drama schools, stage schools, and all this type of stuff. And like, to be fair, there was like quite a few well-known ones, particularly in like North London. So you had Anna Sher, who, you know, Anna Sher was this wonderful lady who basically started so many people's careers. And she had a drama school in Islington for young people. It was very community based. So many people from like so many legends from TV and film went there. Like, you're talking about people like Daniel Kaluuya went there, Reggie Yates, Robert Davis, all these amazing people. And then you know, and then you obviously had people from loads of people from EastEnders were on that. But they had like a waiting list of like 20 years, because obviously the success they'd had. So you couldn't get in. Yeah, you couldn't get into Anna Sher's. And then just by fate, as fate would have it, landed on P, and it was Pollyanna Children's Theatre, and that was in Wapping. My mum called up. She said, "Oh, when do you do classes?" She was like, and then they were like, "Oh, every Saturday." So I remember going in. Me and one of my sisters went in. She was very heavily, my big sister, she was very heavily into like performance. She's so talented. So like way more talented than I could ever really dream, really. She's an amazing musician and all of this type of stuff. And she stayed for like a few, maybe 2 weeks. But I think she was on the cusp. She was like a teenager, deep into her teens at that point. So she would have been about 15, 16. So I was 10. I was about 10, 11. So for me, it was that perfect age where it's like, nothing's phasing me. I'm jumping in. I think for her, she was at that point of like, nah, I want to be doing something. I want to maybe be going and hanging out with boys or going to cinema or something. I don't know. But I was like, this is what I want to do. So Saturdays became this, from like the age of 10, became the most magical thing.
Wow.
Saturdays were just so magical for me, because I'd have my little sandwiches. Mum would make me sandwiches. I'd go. you know, and from like 10 o'clock in the morning, go to Wapping. Either mum would drive me or dad would drive me, depending on who was around. And yeah, we'd do everything. We'd go from reading poems, we'd read plays, we'd read texts, we'd improvise. So you play these improvisation games. Best days of my life. I like Angie, who runs it. I often just text her just to say, Ange, thank you. Because those is like
Oh,
my,
she's
my
still.
she's still doing it, and she's still amazing, and I love her dearly. And she made Saturdays amazing. Saturdays were just magic because I
Mm,
love the magic of creating. Imagine someone says, "Oh, you're going to improvise. You're going to improvise." You know, there'll be these little games, and a lot of actors will know it. They come by different names, but it'll be a game like Freeze, where like one person goes into a scene, and another person comes in, and you act the scene out, and then they say freeze. One person comes out, another person comes in, and then you have to improvise
wow.
based on whatever. And it's
Mm,
the whole improvisation principle of yes and. Uh,
mm,
so just
okay.
that stuff was amazing, and that stuff kind of did loads of life stuff for me, because like now as a human being, I was never shy, but I have less reason to be shy after going to Pollyanna, because you're talking to people, you're meeting people every day. So I just, that did amazing life stuff to me. So they also had an agency attached to them. And so as a young kid, I would go out for commercial castings. I would do voiceover things. I was the voice of the official London sightseeing bus for years as
Okay.
like a little 12-year-old. So yeah, I was the voice that kids used to put their headphones on, and I'd be like, "This is Buckingham Palace," and
Oh,
all this
okay,
type of stuff.
okay,
So I did
okay.
that. I was that voice for years. And then when I was 50, and I do little bits. I was in EastEnders, running around doing some like support, some extra work in EastEnders,
Okay.
or the Bill. I get days doing that, and that was
Bill.
interesting, learning how set worked. And then you get your little money for that, and you're like, "Oh my gosh!" And I'm like, "I get paid for this as well. I'm gonna buy some Reebok Classics." And then when I was 14, actually, I'd come back from America. No, I was 13 actually. I'd tell you, I was 13. Come back from America, summer holidays, with my Aunt Carol, and then I got a call saying, literally I landed and it was like, there's an audition for this show. And I'd auditioned for quite a few shows before that and hadn't got them. I got down to like the last four and hadn't got them. And anyway, there was this film that was going on called When I Was 12. It was by Dominic Savage, the award-winning director. And so I went in, and I did a good job. And that film was based, his technique, Dominic doesn't really have a script. He just kind of has like a rough outline of what a scene should be, kind of like how Larry David
Yeah,
works.
yeah, Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not comedy, it's
Mm.
drama. So he'll put two people in the scene and be like, someone's just killed your dog, and you have to react to that, and that's the thing, and whatever. And I was just really good at that, because that was like that's what we did for fun on Saturdays,
Uh,
improvising. So I did that, and I thought I was going to get it, and then didn't get the job. And then he wrote me this lovely letter, and he was like, you did an amazing job. If anything comes up again, I'd love to work with you. Da, 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 da. And I remember that, and I'm thinking like, all right, because I'd heard it before, I'd seen that before, that kind of like industry lip service. People say one thing, they don't mean it. But lo and behold, the week the film went out, this was like in 2021, the film went out in 2021. That week, he had another film that he was doing, and he was like, listen, come and audition for it. And there was like quite a few rounds of auditions. And this film was called Out of Control. And it was about these young boys who go to a youth offenders institute.
mm,
So it's like baby jail for the
mm.
American people. And that was an amazing, amazing thing. And that was my first big thing. I remember I got like 2 months out of school for that. I never told anyone, because
What
I'd
you were
sort of
doing?
smartened from like, Yeah, I didn't. So I left school. I left school on a Friday. In fact, one of my best friends, we were talking about this the other day. We were out and we were talking about this very thing. He was like, "Yeah, we didn't see you for about 2 months." I was like, "I know," because I'd learned really early to just shut my mouth. And
Mm,
like some people can do The Secret and they can say, like, they can sort of say, I'm going to be in a movie and it happens.
mm.
Until I'm on set, or until like whatever, I just keep quiet. In psychotherapy, I'm sure they call that magical thinking. I think it's called magical thinking, but I believe very much in just keeping quiet about stuff. So people didn't see me for 2 months, but I was off in the north of England in a real prison filming with like other like 15, 16 and 20-year-olds who were like all young actors. And it was the most amazing time of my life. And I said to myself, I was like, this is what I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. I don't want to do anything else. It was just amazing, like real magic. And so Dominic would just direct you. There'd be no kind of script. He'd just say, look, this is what happens in this scene. Your girlfriend from home, she's pregnant now. And so she's come up to see you and she's going to tell you you're having a baby and you're 15, you're going to be a father. How would that make you feel? Action. And we have to do that. And then there's all these cameras, like film cameras as well. So time is money, etc.
What is that? I mean, I'm listening to that,
Mm.
and that would tell me that I would have to embellish the character, just think about it, and almost become the character.
Mm.
But what's the difference when you are given a script by a director, and you then study the script and then also become the character? Is and
Um,
what's been the
I don't
difference
want to
between the two?
say too much because yeah, everyone has their own process with scripts and what they do. But with a script, the fundamental thing is you're having to learn lines. And there's a general rigidity of structure. If you start at point A, you know that this line here is point B. So you have to get all the lines in between, and there's a rigidity of structure because you know that when it gets to point B, it says, and he exits or she exits. In this improvisational structure, it's like, yeah, there's a point A and a point B, but it's freehand because Dominic's going, this is the shape of it that I want, but there's an element of what would you say in a situation? What would 15-year-old you in these
Mm.
circumstances say? And that's the whole magic of this thing that we're doing. It's just really amazing make believe. It's just a really high level make believe. So there's a freeness in that because what I actually found in that process, which was kind of spoiled me as well, going forward, was that like you get the ability to throw in these gems. Like I remember looking at there was a review in the Edinburgh Film Festival and I have it in my living room. There's this whole book that they did and they quoted one of my lines. One of my lines as like, they said, oh, it's a gem, but it's something I made up. And I know a lot of actors talk about like, oh, I basically made up this whole scene. It's a very annoying thing that actors do. They love to like say how much of a scene that they improvised and wrote. But in Dominic's case, it literally is that. So you can kind of take some unofficial credit if you come out with a gem.
Mm.
And I would say things. I was saying things that 15-year-old me would say. So if like I was chatting up a girl, there was a scene where the young actress who eventually becomes my partner. The lady's name is Alison Scott. But in the film, she was called Monique, and I'm having to chat her up as 15-year-old me. And I was saying things that I would have said that I would have found funny. And so she was reacting in like a real way. And it was silly, corny things,
Mhm.
but like to me, it was funny. So it's just the magic of him being able to capture those moments, which they
Mhm.
weren't on paper. They weren't on paper at all. So that's if there's a difference, it's that. It's like you're capturing lightning in a bottle. And then on the flip side, there'll be some scenes where just nothing. You don't get the magic. It just depends
Yeah.
on what I might have eaten that day or how I came in. So that there's a beauty in that actually, in that freeness.
Yeah, and for those, Out of Control came out in 2002, so it wasn't it wasn't about 5 years
Yes,
ago.
yes,
You did say 2020,
yeah.
21. So
Oh, what did I say? What did I say?
2021.
Oh, wow. Okay, it's late. It's late. No,
Yeah,
that came out in 2002. Yes, yes,
2002, yeah.
yes.
But then
Yeah, 2000.
when this is happening, you get that spot in there. You still thinking, are you ever thinking Hollywood, or are you just thinking dominating TV, or are you thinking this is actually happening and it can become a career? When you've done your out of control and do you then think, and you're going back to school the next day, are you thinking that this?
It's interesting because I'd had this really, it was a really emotional period of time. Now, mind you, I didn't know what to expect from this like 2 months away. And it was just magic because I didn't go home during that 2 months. So obviously I spoke to my parents and all this type of stuff, but I was getting these brown envelopes of money once a week to I'm 15. I'm getting brown envelopes of money to like look up, we're staying in the hotel. So this is my money to kind of just live and get something at the hotel. And I'm growing up. My growing up as a young man is accelerating
Mm.
in a way that it wouldn't if I was just in school. I'm learning about life in a different way. I'm learning about being a professional. I have a job. I have a job. And so actually, when we finished that process and I came back to school, I was kind of like, hmm. I kind of saw people different, as in like I was like, you lot are kids.
Yeah.
It's like, you lot are kids.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was so hungry to get back out and do more and
Mm.
be with like-minded people, whether that was people of my own age who were young professionals or with the adults, because there was so much stuff to soak up from them. And then I remember being so sad when we went to the Edinburgh Film Festival in summer. And that was almost going to be, that was like our final time of all being together.
Oh, the cast and crew.
Yeah, and there was a small bunch of us, like Leo Gregory, who was like on that job. He was my partner in crime. He was much older than me, but he was like, we went into jail together, and it was an incredible performance by him. But I remember looking up to him and thinking what an amazing actor he was, and he just gave me a lot of gems. And I remember being at the Edinburgh Film Festival, and I was like 15. I was still 15 that summer. I hadn't turned 16 yet, and just being around adults, like I hadn't worked with Tamsin Outhwaite in the film, but getting to as a 15-year-old spend time with these adults, and Tamsin Outhwaite was a major star on TV, and like she was in EastEnders, and
Mm.
so she just left the show EastEnders, and I was like, "You're Tamsin, you're famous." She would drop gems to me, and she would try and help me, and things like that. And I remember being really sad at like it was like our last dinner together. And I was like, I don't want this to end. Yeah. I really don't want this to end. And then over that first summer, we had to do work experience. Like, so school was like, it was like
Mm.
the first GCSE year 10. And it was like, you've got to get a job in summer. And I was like, okay, so I didn't even apply for it. I was very naughty. I just tagged along with my friends to the computer exchange in the West End. They weren't expecting me, but I was just like, I can't be bothered to be here. So I'm just gonna come along and hang around, because in my head I was like, I won't be working a regular job in my life. I'm going to be in the movies. So to your original point, youth, the ambition of youth and the kind of blind faith that youth has and that affords us is so brilliant, because you don't know any better. You can just dream in that way and just be like, yeah, of course I'm going to be doing this forever. Of course I am. So there was a lot of that. And I never had a doubt actually about quote unquote succeeding or making it in the song. I never had a doubt. And then that summer, I actually did a pilot for what would become The Crouches. Did an
Mm.
audition, got the job for the pilot. We did a table read kind of pilot back in those days. And then the next summer, keep on saying 2023. 2003, we filmed The Crouches for like 2 months. So that was another 2 months out of school during my GCSEs. So like
Wow.
American equivalent is like GED or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I had 2 months out, and I came back after that, and I actually got the highest marks in the whole year, actually, just to prove the point that I was, very good at school. So I was out for 2 months, and I got everything was like an A star. I think the only thing that I got a C in was maths, but that's fine. And then to further answer your question, I didn't look back after that because I didn't go to college. I didn't go to college. I didn't go to university. I just was like, I'm going to continue. And it was blind faith because I had no reason to be that confident that I was going to succeed because it was like, well, you've done a few jobs, yeah. But then I got a role in Doctors on BBC One, which was like a big daytime show.
Mm.
And I went in for a guest role for one episode, did the audition, didn't get it. My agent, Pollyanna at the time, rang and said, got some bad news and some good news. So I was like, what's the bad news? You didn't get that role. So, okay, fine. The good news is they've written a role for you.
Wow.
And I got to play the son of Aryan Bakari, who's now a BAFTA winner and is actually in Black Ops Series 1. I got to play his son. So I thought I was only coming up when I landed they film it in Birmingham. And when I landed there, I thought like, oh, I'm just going to be doing a week or so. And he said to me, the first thing he said to me was, how do you feel? You're going to be a regular here. You're going to be here for a few years. I said, what?
2 years.
Because I thought I was doing everything. So they'd written a character for me, which is the first and only time that that's ever happened. To go in for one role and then to get like an amazing regular role, which further changed my life in a different way. So I was up in Birmingham for 2 years in an apartment. Arian, bless him, was like, well, come and live with me. He didn't make me pay rent for like most of the time. It was only like maybe the last 6 months. He was like, oh, you got to pay rent now. But no, he had an amazing flat. And it grew me up as a man in that period of time because I was away from home for real. I'd go visit home on a weekend occasionally, but I was living in Birmingham and filming and working. And while my friends were going to college, so I missed out on that college thing. I'd sometimes visit my friends. Some of my friends went to City and Islington College and they went to various places, and I'd sometimes see them and I'd sort of look at them with all respect. We're all grown-ups now, but I'd be like, you lot are kids. What are you doing? Where's your bank card? I was doing because I was going out for dinner with my girlfriend. We're going out to Benihana and these fancy restaurants and stuff like that. As a 16, 17-year-old, like it grew me up so quickly in that period of time. So there was a work component to it. Yes, I'm filming, I'm learning my trade as an actor and all of that, but I'm also learning life via Arian, via being up in that space. While there, he really like fostered and encouraged me to like push the other things I do. So he was like, oh, you're good at this music thing. You need to be doing this as well, So, a lot of my money I spent on music equipment while I was there and was writing songs and doing all that type of stuff. So, I think the beauty of youth is that you are like, I can do it. And you don't know any different, and you shouldn't, because the world is your oyster and you get one life. And so actually I took it by the horns.
Yeah, I mean, but you can't. I think a lot of credit then is from your parents who nurtured that and gave you and open up that avenue. Because as I said, if you have a family, if you have parents who are like, "Oh, you want to do that? Yep, here's a guitar, here's this." It's like parents now who take their kids to football practice because hey, you could be the next Saka, so let's invest in it. But to have the parents who gave you that opportunity, your mum
They did.
be hearing that someone says, "Oh, he's good. Okay, let's find a drama school that then leads to the acting school that leads to the auditions." When you were on Doctors, which doing over 200 episodes, the parents are watching on TV. What are they thinking? They're like, "Oh man, our boys made it, or are they still grounding you, or what was their reaction?
That was the first time they had to parent me. And by that, I mean, it was the first time because everything was kind of done on autopilot. I was a very obedient child, barring a bad mark on, it's usually maths that I got bad marks on or something. Barring that, my parents, there was no infractions or incursions that they'd have to come to school for or anything like that. It's pretty much autopilot parenting, and which is miraculous for the time and area that I grew up in and being a boy. So I thank God for that. So, but when I say it was the first time they had to parent me, it was because they were like, I'm telling you about all these things that are happening. So I'm telling you out of control. I'm growing up. I'm learning these things. Then I do the crouches, which, spoke about the time I spent with Don Warrington and Robbie G and all these people. And then the next year after that, I moved to Birmingham years. So I'm not a parent yet. I will be, inshallah. But I don't know what that feeling is. I can't yet understand that feeling of like seeing your child, then not seeing them, and then every time they come back, they've advanced somehow, and you haven't been there for the micro of it. You've seen the macro. You're just seeing the macro and going like, oh, how's this? And so there was a point where my parents, I remember my mum sat me down I came home one weekend and she sat me down. My mum has this very nice china. She's got very nice china, very nice stuff that she puts out. When it's serious, she'll bring that out and have a cup of tea. She'll be very, very, very traditional with it. Sit down like that. So my dad's there and I'm like, oh, what's this about? She's like, you need to go back to school. You need to finish school. Wow. And I'm like, I think I was 17 at this point. And she was kind of like, listen, you've gone off, you're doing doctors and you're living away from home, but you're not going to school anymore. You need to go to university and you need to do this, you need to do that. And I just said to them, no, I don't want to. I don't want to. And it was the first time in my life that it was the first time in my life that I'd said a defiant no, because I was like, are you aware of what I'm doing? Like, this isn't normal. I'm doing pretty good. And the joke is we'd had this long chat and then I took the remote control and I pressed it onto BBC One. The show was on and it was my title sequence. I was like, look, I'm there. I had my whole title sequence and all that type of stuff. So the argument was pretty concrete. And I think it was when around that time, people started coming up to them, their friends, their peers, and was saying, oh, we are so proud. We are so proud of him. And that thing in Afro-Caribbean culture, it's the validation of the friends and the village that softens thing. Because everything is like, and maybe it's some colonial stuff, I don't know, but there's a lot of shame-based parenting. There's a lot of, we don't want to be shamed. We don't want to be embarrassed. But if you've made the village proud, it's like, oh, well. So, and there was a lot of that. And so I think that softened it. And then, and then I kept going. And then obviously, inevitably, as a younger actor, kid actor, you go from like being in everything to having a slowdown, because unless you're a major star, that transition from being a young teen to early adult, particularly if you're a Black actor, there wasn't a Top Boy in the kind of early 2000s. There wasn't a thing. There wasn't a Netflix. There wasn't a star system. There wasn't a star system for young Black talent. There wasn't we didn't get the benefit of like a social media where you can now look at someone who's young and Black and they've got hundreds of thousands of followers and an ecosystem to help propagate that talent. You know what I mean? You'll be lucky to get an article in Young Voices, which is the Voice newspaper's like supplement. You'll be lucky to get one of those. And they were usually reserved for the bigger black talent at the time, like the Richard Blackwoods and people like that, or musicians. But like there wasn't, in the early 2000s, the biggest stars from the acting kind of environment were It was Ashley Waters. Ashley
Mm.
Waters was the biggest male actor, even at that point, because he was just about to do, I think he'd just done the 50 Cent film. And then you had Carolyn Chikese, who was doing As If. Remember that show on E4, As If? And she was
Mm.
brilliant in that. But even her, like, she should have been huge. She was our Nia Long. But she was our Nia Long, beautiful, could act, rings around her whole cast, and was just like, she was it. And
Mm.
timing. So anyway, to the point I was making, there was a point where it's like, oh, maybe my parents are right, because I had a lull. There was a
Um,
little quiet lull. But then that was maybe about 6 months and went straight back in. And then I did a film in Romania with Tara Reid. And then ironically, I had this poster of Ashley Waters on my wall. Or it was an article, in fact. I had a poster of it was an article of Ashley, and then there was an article of Estelle, and then there was an article of Chiwetel Ejiofor, because this was off the back of Dirty Pretty Things and all the things that he'd done. But those are like, they were on my kind of vision. And then I ended up in a film with both Estelle and Ashley Waters, like immediately after that.
wow.
And Estelle ended up leaving the film to go work with John Legend, but that film became yeah, this is just around the time she'd signed with John Legend. But then that film eventually became Life and Lyrics, which we filmed 20 years ago this year. We filmed that in '05. And that was like, that changed my life in a different way, because it was the first time I had like real official music validation. Like, Ashley was the star of the film. It was billed as the UK Life and Lyrics. And I've got loads of fond memories of it, but the film eventually got lost in the shuffle of post kidulthood. Kidulthood came and blazed the trail.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
I
Yeah.
got left in the dust of that. But that changed my life in a lot of ways, because it was the first time I'd had like an official superstar, UK superstar, say to me, "You're brilliant at this music thing." Like,
Oh.
actually, I remember like actually had heard rumblings about like, oh, I was good at music. And he summoned me to his trailer one morning. He's like, "You may enter." And and so he was like, "Yeah, they told me you're good at music." And then anyway, from there, we just built up a really like a brotherhood, where he, would always just come to me for music, or ask my opinion and things like that. And then he was one of the first people in this business to say, "You're really brilliant at music, like do stuff with it." And so, and that was, yeah, that's kind of like the early parts, that part of my career. But it was a different time then. It
Yeah.
was a really different
I'm
time.
gonna save the music part for later, for a
Sure.
different show.
Yeah.
Yes. But I wanted to talk before we get to Black Ops,
Yeah.
a show that it actually was trouble made headlines in America as well. Famila.
Famalam. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and I think because I think the sketch that people that who's the birthday girl, but
Yeah.
the African aunties.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, why it was only on for 2 seasons? I it just it,
We had three. We had three, to be fair. We had 3 seasons of that, to be fair. They wanted to do a fourth, but I didn't want to do a fourth. I'm not trying to sound like high and mighty, but like I think it's best to leave the party before the lights come on. It's best to leave the
is it like
party.
a Ricky Gervais and Fawlty Towers and The
A
Office?
little,
Like let's just
like a little bit. Like, there was a couple of things. I'd grown a bit tired of
Mm,
doing it, if I'm completely honest. I've grown a bit tired because they're quite exhausting to make. You're making
wow.
like 30 short films,
Mm.
space of like 6 weeks, and any of those short films can be cut from the thing. And
Oh,
then,
you guys don't
like,
have control, creative
no, no, we
control.
do, we do. But
Okay.
what I mean is, when we're putting together these 20-minute episodes or 22-minute episodes, sometimes we have more stuff than we need. So you're just
Mm,
having to get rid and be like, oh, we can't have this. Or sometimes you film something and it just doesn't work.
okay.
And there was a lot of that. And it's just very exhausting to put together. And then there was also, being completely honest, because this is the producer side of my career, is that there was a lot of um producing and the way I was doing it, because I was very involved personally with people. I was like kind of what you're doing, like just kind of doing sort of psychotherapy as well. Because as a director, producer, whatever, if you're these people, you're building a family to some degree, and sometimes that's a way of doing it, a good way of doing it. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just business, and you just got to come in and do your job. And actually, a tiring component of that, particularly because I was like, no, this is like young black talent, and we all need to kind of I need to try and do my best and use my experience to try and help people and all that type of stuff. It's tiring. It's tiring, and you end up overextending and overexpending your energy, and then you kind of stand back and go like, oh well, I'm emotionally drained, because there was an element of that. Being completely honest. So doing a fourth one and having to expend the same energy when like it probably would be best used serving myself, and putting that energy into myself would be better. So they were trying to put together a fourth, and I was like, look, I don't want to do it. So, and then luckily we had Black Ops land around the same time, so it felt like the natural transition.
In hindsight, looking back, because I guess it's a difference when you are a talent and then you are then part of the production, producing and creating, being extending yourself
Yeah.
like that. In hindsight, if that show was to be put on today, knowing what you know now, what would you have done different?
Keep everything business. And be like, because what I notice about producers, I mean, look, the best producers, yeah, they put they use all their 24 hours, and they can fix everything and all this type of stuff. And I'd also, because I'm the child of a pub landlord, there's it sounds really silly, but there's a lot of crossover between a set and management. So whether it's pub managers, there's so much. Basically, the idea is something is going to go wrong at some point. Your job is to fix it without anyone knowing that there was ever a problem. That's kind of the job of producing. Like, that's the job. And it bleeds into the directing part, it bleeds into the writing part. But it's exhausting. And as being an actor myself, we are all like emotional creatures. And I don't mean like, I just mean that we all come in to a set with our things and our wants and our needs and all that type of stuff. And I was always trying my best to accommodate. And actually, I honestly feel like there is a toll that can take on one to a certain degree. So, and then you kind of look at the risk reward kind of thing, and you have to kind of prioritize yourself and your mental health as well, overall. But Famalam was like one of the joys of my life, because it was me getting to do everything. I was getting to write, I was getting to produce, I was getting to make music as well. So most of the music you hear in the show, there's a song in the show, I've written it. Or I've made it.
What about the
Birthday Girl?
Yeah.
I wrote that. Yeah, I wrote that, did the production on that. So that was all me. And there's all these different voices.
What about not the rap, the what they call it? We're from the
Oh,
gangs.
the Turf Wars. Yeah, that's the music on that is me. That's me.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's all me. Yeah. So that Family was one of the joys of my life, and look, I'm so proud of the cast. I think they are like the stars. Yeah, they're the stars of today and tomorrow. Like I'm really proud of what we put down. I just know there was a selfish element for me as a producer and learning going forward about how to do it and how best to do it. And sometimes you can put a lot of yourself in and thinking that it just, you can put a lot of yourself in and put really wear it on your back. And actually the best thing to do is keep it a bit more business, which is tough. But look, like, I'm so proud of that cast, and the joy is that you've got, like, I get to watch Bemi, I get to watch Viv and Samson and Tom and Danielle and Roxy and John McMillan all fly and do the amazing things. So the legacy is irrevocable of that show. It's irrevocable. And sometimes things will pop up and you're like, oh, there's a sketch for that. There's a Famalam sketch for that, you know. So really
But
cool.
then how did Black Ops then come about? Because I know, it was something that we looked at and said, okay, actually the
Yeah.
same some of the familiars
Yeah,
from
some
yeah.
of the DNA is there. So it was the first week of Famalam, the very first week. We had a lunch break and a couple of the execs came down to set. So we were just sitting having lunch. And I said, we need a show for Bemi. I said, we need a show
Oh.
for Bemi. Because Bemi's like, it's probably old hat at this point, like how much I love Bemi,
Mm.
just as a person, but also like just as a talent. And I was like, we need a show for her. So they were like, fine, sure, you guys come in and we'll talk about it. And then so she threw out this idea of two undercover cops, and then it went from there. Two undercover police officers, PCSOs, community support officers, and then from there, and that's where, and it was a beautiful thing that it was from the DNA of Famalam.
Mm.
It was beautiful because it was like me and Bemi have a brother-sister relationship anyway. Like we will spend 2 hours on the phone, either arguing or debating or listening or in fellowship or whatever. So it was just a very easy kind of thing to build from that relationship because we'd worked together on Dane Baptiste's Sunny D. And that's how Bemi became involved in Famalam from the beginning. So to also see where her career's gone and
Mm.
see the kind of national institution that she's built herself into, Bemi's like my surest bet. Like this week is like she'll be Dame Bemi Solid. She will be.
How did you see the reception of the first season of Black Ops?
It was so nice to see because with these things, it's not like a sketch show where you're putting things out a la carte and people could take
Mm.
bits and bobs from it. Oh, I like this sketch, I don't like that one. So you don't know. You
Mm.
just really don't know. So to see it go out and people like really enjoying it. Like I was on my way somewhere. Like, and this is just an interesting thing about Reach. I was at an airport and someone came up to me and was like, yo, Black Ops. And I was like, ah. I was on the train the other day. I was on the train and then someone did a similar thing. So it's beautiful to see people resonate with it and to enjoy it. And you know, in the last few years, them being like, when's it coming back? When's it coming back? So it's really exciting to be putting out another one and to see where our characters are going. And to see, you know, Dom and Kay just back and we've established them, and then they in this series just get to have more fun and more capers. It's really good. And I don't take it for granted the fact that we have talent like we have Bemi and Hamid on screen again, just getting to just be like 3D Roy G. Biv, fully colored versions of themselves. It's amazing. So I pinch myself about it.
Are you how involved behind the scenes are you with this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the brain trust. So I'm like, you know, it's Bemi, myself, Joe Tucker, and Lloyd Wolf, who are kind of like execs, and Josh Cole, not to forget Josh Cole, who are execs on it. So from like script stage, we just all get in a room, throw it all about. Then we've got some amazing guest writers that we bring in. So we have, you know, a great writing room that we have where we will further thrash those ideas that we have sat around with, and like, and everyone will say their piece. And so everyone will say, oh, I think this should happen. I think that should happen. And it's a really amazing assembly of brains because normally you don't have that many people who are like
Mm.
co-creators on something. It's usually
Mm.
2 people, but just kind of organically it's worked out this way. But yeah, so I'm very heavily involved. There's not so much music on this one. Sort of, you know, because that would be kind of overkill. But it's not the same kind of thing as Famalam. But yeah, so very, very involved on this one. And and I'm in it as well. So
Yeah. What about the fact that is it going on BBC One or two?
BBC One, BBC One. BBC One
So
prime time, baby.
yeah,
Prime
so
time.
what is that like then to be on, because you start off on BBC Three, then then all of a sudden you move to one that's like, okay, this is, we have good hopes for this.
Yeah.
Is there additional pressure? Because I'm wondering how many other black shows, predominantly black cat leads, have been on BBC One.
It's more commonplace now than than you think, like, and it's beautiful, it's just normal. Like Ajani Salmons just had series 2 of Dreaming Whilst Black. I was in series 1, shameless plug.
Mm,
I was in series 1. That was a BBC One transmission. Nicole Lecky's her second offering of Wild Cherry has just come out on BBC One. Um,
yes, yes, I
and
saw
I
it.
think I think Mood was on BBC Three. And so it's kind of like, oh, it's not just one. It's
Mm,
not just one. So it's healthy in that way because you're taking off a natural, I mean, there's natural pressure because you want to do well on the biggest channel in our country, the
yeah.
biggest terrestrial channel, but there is so much support from the commissioning. That's John Petrie and Seb Barwell. So much support from the
Mm,
channel at large that you don't really feel pressure in that way.
mm.
Like, and I genuinely mean it. I'm not just saying it because Natalie's listening in. But no, no, there is so much support from the channel at large, and also being buffeted by our contemporaries, our peers in
Mm,
that same tranche of shows is cool because it's like, okay, cool, you're gonna do a Dreaming Whilst Black, that's gonna have an amazing run, and Nicole will do a Wild Cherry. We'll come with Black Ops 2, and then you've got Mr. Loverman, which is a
mm.
different thing, more
Yeah,
dramatic kind
yeah.
of thing, and Nathaniel Martello the White directed something recently, a kind of comedy drama, so you have a plethora of different voices and different faces on TV. And
Mm,
the more it's done in a way where it isn't kind of earmarked as like, here, this is the black show. The
mm.
more it's just done like, this is a thing that happens to have
Black
black
leads.
talent at the
Yeah.
forefront, obviously with its own intrinsic blackness in it, but
Mm.
without having to herald the fact that it's black. It's like
Yeah.
by virtue of the fact that you're seeing melanin on screen, like let that be the sell.
Yeah. I mean, as a therapist with the National Health Service, I mean, I don't walk into when I with young people and say, okay, well, I'm your black therapist today. How can I help you out?
There you go. There you go.
You don't notice
You
it.
don't do that. You don't do that. And it's you're never going to fully be able to undo that programming because it is programming. No matter what you say, there's a programming element of it that goes in. You're never going to fully be able to undo it, but just the commonality of seeing faces.
Mm.
Like it's no longer. I used at the beginning of this talk. I used the mummy. There's a black person on TV principle. Doesn't apply so much for the younger generation because it's so commonplace.
I mean, I would say that I notice a major difference in this because I went to university in America and I
Oh,
spent over 10 years out in America before.
whereabouts? Okay, whereabouts?
So I lived in Alabama,
Okay.
then went to university in Wisconsin, Milwaukee,
Yeah.
then worked out in Los Angeles.
Oh wow.
And I've got two younger brothers living in Portland.
Oh yeah.
So I was very much immersed and especially during the 90s and early 2000s, living out there. Um, but I guess coming here and I guess when I watch a show, something like when I watch Black Ops, uh, the things that they say that I'm like I can get as a Nigerian because the heritage, like, yeah, okay, look at how we took. But then I think I also noticed that there's a lot more exposure to African British in the country today
Mm.
than there has ever been. So people would say, yes, I know that character, That's my neighbor's, that's like my neighbor, or that's like the person I go to church with.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of integration with West Africans in white churches and communities and schools. So you can always, now you're relating. So it's not as if, oh, that's a culture that we don't understand. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, that's like Mrs. Jones, and oh, that's like
exactly. Yeah,
Shehu.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so culture isn't siloed fully like into this or ghettoized into these little pockets. There's an under to what you're saying, there's people that you can recognize. But it's so funny you say about the church thing because I grew up Catholic. So
Mm.
so the churches that I was going to were mostly like Irish,
Mm,
and
yeah.
there's yeah, a lot of Nigerians, some Cameroonians, but Irish and Caribbean
Mm.
in those churches. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
difference did you notice? Because I've noticed it visually since George Floyd
Mm.
passing, the shift around. I see it in commercials. You'd always see more the culture. Okay, we're gonna have at least, even if it's white father and a black mother, or
Yeah.
vice versa. Or, commercials. Newscasters. I see shows,
Yeah.
Sky Arts. I see the
Yeah.
BBC, and I start to see like, oh, wait a minute. 5 years ago, this wasn't like
Yeah.
this, but all of
Yeah.
a sudden,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's great
Well, we
from you from in the end as an entertainer. Are you seeing a lot more openings because there's a sense of, yeah, we need to improve our diversity and inclusion or diversity?
Yeah, I mean, we have that sketch from Famalam series three, the interracial couples in an advert. If you look at that, like I'm in that, we kind of do this take on hot chocolate, I believe in miracles. So I basically kind of did a version of I believe in miracles, and we commented on that because I think at that time, 2020, we were noticing that upswing in one in interracial couples on TV, but just general black representation in the selling of things.
Mm,
And I'm trying to work out, and I think we did done that pre George Floyd.
mm,
Um, we done that pre. I think post George Floyd, yeah, there is a real onus to from companies, with DEI to try and attract that commerce. And some of it feels forced, just being completely honest. Some of it feels like a grab because it's not sustained, as you've noticed that it's lessened over time,
mm,
or some of it is lessened over time, and then you sort of realize, oh, these people are kind of working algorithmically versus altruistically. They're not doing it because they generally want to. Otherwise, they would have done it 20 years prior. But actually, sometimes you do need a cataclysm. And pardon me for using George Floyd's name in that way, saying that's a cataclysm, but it was a big moment in
yeah.
blackdom. It took blackdom. And you need moments like that as a reckoning to make people wake the hell up and, work things out. And those companies who are genuine and do care, they will continue that, whether overtly or covertly and all that type of stuff. But there's so much commentary about DEI and its the merits or the demerits of it, and actually a lot of it is just leveling the playing field and
Mm,
providing access, and the cream will always rise. But
mm,
when I see people having arguments against it, it's kind of like it's really difficult to argue against in the sense that naturally people would veer towards the status quo. If you never see any other alternative,
yeah.
you'll keep doing the same thing forever. The orthodoxy of what you've known, you will keep propagating that because you know nothing different. And I always think from a kind of production and TV perspective, there's been a lot of colorblind casting and things like that. And something like Bridgerton is its own
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
where
yeah,
it's kind of,
yeah.
but it's a version of Regency Britain. Shonda Rhimes isn't saying this is how it was. There was black men riding around in horses. She's not saying that because it just wasn't happening in Britain. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
there's the Black Tudors book, and there were a lot of black people in Britain, but there weren't black lords and dukes of that nature. But if, for instance, we aren't pushing where a story necessitates it, if we aren't pushing that or saying like there's a romance where you could have legitimately a black talent leading it, why not try that? And why not, particularly when you have black talent from this country at least at the level that it is now, why wouldn't you wanna push that forward instead of the orthodoxy? Like I'm not trying to listen. Paul Mescal's cool and everything. He's cool and all sorts, but like there's a young black actor who is boy next door. He's boy next door. He's more boy next door to me than Paul Mescal is. You see what I'm saying? And I have to. I don't want to poo on his name, but it's important I say this because you've got to speak truth to power. But like I remember when like people came out, it's like, oh my gosh, Paul Mescal is the boy next door. Not to me. Like I know a boy next door who I can relate to, girls can relate to, and all that type of stuff. So it's just pushing that. And actually that thing is a industry wide thing. It's a thing until the people creating the thing and casting the thing and directing the thing interact with people from outside their walks of life that don't look like them. They're not going to see it. Like at one point in time, you go in for a casting and there'll be a role. You go up for a role and it'll be like robber. I mean, to be fair, I didn't ever have to play any of these roles, but a lot of my contemporaries and peers have said this. Going for a robber or doorman or whatever. Because that's how the person who wrote it interacts and relates to people of color. They only interact with them in that sphere. Whereas if you, as a creator of something or a casting director, if you was to have a dinner party and you could only invite 6 people, if all of those 6 people look like you're the only time you interact with anyone outside of that is in Tesco's or
Yeah,
nightclub.
yeah.
And so, you know, and it's a really kind of I kind of think like people who live in big cities, like, how could you not have a black friend or an Asian friend? Like, what? Stay in Suffolk. Stay in Suffolk. If that's what you want to do, stay in Suffolk. So that's really that's part of the what pushes things forward is that the people making a decision, not only being obviously gifted and talented or whatever, but just have like a more like a richer palette of experiences.
Yeah.
And so just to speak to speaking of the diversity conversation, it kind of it goes right back to that. It goes from diversity of thought and experience as well.
Yes. Well, as I said, I think there is for those who are going to be, and I just want to make sure, when does the second series of Black Ops come out, and where can they watch it, and do they need to catch up on season 1 before it comes out?
Oh, listen, we'll take your views. We will take your views. So catch up with it on iPlayer. We are going out on the 8th of January. So, in that post-Christmas, post-New Year's slump, you're going to be indoors. You spent all your money, sit indoors, sit down, binge it, watch it bit by bit with a partner, with a loved one, whatever you want to do, sit down and watch this. But definitely, you can catch up with series 1 because series 1 is phenomenal and it's BAFTA award winning. Second BAFTA for that one. And yeah, catch up with it. And so it's a continuation. It's Dom and Kay up to more hijinks, more thrills, and more laughs. We're really, really proud of this series.
Yes, definitely. Now, what I have to do is schedule you back, um, because at 9:30 I have a live stream that I'm
Good. No, all good. Schedule me back
Huh?
if you can be bothered to hear me waffle more. But
No, I actually, because that's why I deliberately didn't get into the music, because
yeah,
I know that, yeah, I was looking at, yeah, because it's Thanksgiving in America, and because we scheduled this
Of
review
course.
of Brandy's Full Moon album, and it's live streaming in
Oh,
at
come on, full
9:30.
moon. I'm jealous, man. I'm
Yeah,
jealous. I'm jealous. You get to talk about the full moon album.
yeah, and I've
What?
interviewed Rodney
Oh,
many
come
twice,
on.
and so
Come
yeah.
on. I met him once at the Ivor Novellos,
Okay.
and I just went up to him as a fan. I was like, yo, I've got to shake your hand. It's RJ, man.
Yeah,
Ronnie
yeah,
Jackets.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, he's come on twice.
Yeah.
And actually, you probably wouldn't realize that Michael Jackson features on one of the tracks. I need to remember it. Um,
On I was listening to it the other day. I was having this conversation. He does some BVs on it, right?
he does background harmony.
Yeah.
And let me see. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. Yeah. No, no, I was having that conversation the other day. But then I also, this is the joy of AI. Someone did a what if Michael Jackson did Never Say Never, the album. Because I have this whole thing, and we'll talk about it separately. I have
Yeah.
this whole thing about like the Invincible album being 3 years too late. But
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
whole separate conversation. I think
I did tell it, Rodney, that yeah, I did tell him that, and actually
yeah,
that yeah, because I worked briefly at Edmunds Entertainment Group out in LA with
yeah,
Tracy Edmonds, Babyface, and
yeah,
their
yeah,
label John B. Before moving back to the UK, and his music was waning. Well, that type of stuff he did on Invincible was waning, but they recorded the Invincible stuff around 98.
yeah.
But
But it's
Michael kept it, and released it by 20. At that time, that sound was
I could
disappeared.
talk about it all day long.
Yeah.
I could talk about why, because I was talking about You Rock My World and why like people love it and revere it. But I remember being in my parents' basement at hearing it in '01, September '01.
Hmm.
Or no, August '01. I think that went to radio, and I was like, yeah, this is good, but
Yeah.
it's not. And
It it
then
yeah.
there's the conversation about the Neptunes doing a version of it. I just hindsight is 2020, but I hate Invincible. I'll be really honest, I hate it. I think like Cry is one of my least favorite Michael Jackson songs
Yeah.
ever. I think this is what I think, and I'll leave you with this. He should have the Jacksons have a history with Philadelphia, with Gamble and Huff.
Hmm.
He should have gone back to Philly entirely. So Dre Vidal, Butterflies, he should have done that sound. I want
Yeah.
out of here. He should have done an album of
Tim and Bob.
Butterflies.
He could have gone Tim and
He
Bob.
could have,
They
but I
did
think he's got some
ballads.
Tim and Bob records. I think he had some Tim and Bob
Yeah,
records.
well, Tim, I interviewed both of them, and they did
Yeah,
record stuff with him,
yeah.
but it didn't come out. Yeah.
If he'd stayed in that Butterflies pocket and
Yeah.
given
Yeah.
us a script back instead of trying to go blockbuster and hit everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
to me, and some of the best songs on that are like really simple songs, like the Carlos Santana "Whatever Happens" is a beautiful song.
Yeah. Yeah. Heaven Can Wait. What about that one?
I love Heaven Can Wait, and that's who did that? Dr. Freeze produced that one.
So it
Break
was a mixture of so actually so I spoke with the producer
yeah,
Phonetic.
yeah.
They were recording for Kevon Edmonds. He was actually in the
Okay.
studio recording for his album.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah,
Kevon says, but he was thinking this is a Michael Jackson song. So they were trying to get him to sing it like Michael. Then
yeah,
Kevon says, "Why are you giving me a Michael, trying to let me sound like Michael?"
yeah,
That's when
yeah,
he says, "Let me go to Teddy." And then
yeah,
Teddy
yeah,
says, "Send it to Michael." And Michael says, "I
yeah.
want to record it." So
And
yeah,
that's a dope record. It's aged well. I think Break of Dawn is gorgeous.
yeah.
I think the Rodney records are great, but I think Rodney should have just done the whole project because
Well,
then you have
he was doing no project. But they, yeah, yeah, it's funny because I've interviewed Rodney twice. I've interviewed um, John Marie, who was the engineer on that, and he the engineer on the Dangerous album. He engineered Blackstreet. He was with Teddy,
yeah,
and they
yeah.
talk about how they hit a wall, and Michael just said, "Okay, I need a new direction," and that's when he called back Teddy to
That's when
bring
he
some
called back.
tracks and stuff. But too
What
many songs on the album as well.
2,000 watts? What like
That was a
no
Tyree. That was Tyrese's
Tyrese
song.
song? It was a
Yeah,
Tyrese song,
it was supposed to. Yeah.
but there's also because it's recently come out the T-Pain guide that he did, the T-Pain and Usher record.
Mm,
There's a T-Pain and Usher record that they had for Michael, but
mm.
the I think it's T-Pain's artist leaked it. Google it. Google T-Pain Usher, Michael, and you'll hear it and you're like, because that was around, I think, 08, 09. And you're like, oh, this is what Michael needed at that time. Anyway, I could talk about this all day long. But I'll leave you with this before we chat again. This book, if you can see it, this book, and I have so many books about the music, about the essay. There's a Joseph Vogel book as well, which is a great book about Michael's song. But that one, I got it in LA a few years ago. It's a great book because it sort of details all the songs going back to like Jackson 5 stuff. And even like, you know, they didn't do much in the way of like who played on what on those like liner notes in the J5 days, because, you know, Motown were quite secretive, but it tells you a lot. So you're talking about like Got to Be There album and, you know, the Music and Me album, all those albums that I actually grew up with. That's like my childhood. Those aren't my parents' records. I bought those records. So I'm a Michael fanatic. Like, okay.
I mean, what we'll do, in fact, we'll probably I'll probably get you to to do one of my live streams on, because with live streams we get a couple of hundred, up to a couple of thousand people who watch those live streams, and we tend to say our top 20 Michael songs. Like tonight we're going to do the full moon, and it's like, let's rank it from our top 10 songs. So, and I think last week I did Karen White's versus Pebbles, and then Karen White gave me the top 10 songs, and so and stuff. But we will do that with Michael. We'll do that. But that's why I said I deliberately didn't go into the music, because I was like, okay, no, because I know that I've got 15 minutes to be able to switch.
No. You get ready. You get ready for your stream. You get ready for your stream. The other, and I'll say this off the record or on the record, you can cut this bit out, but someone you should speak to about Michael, who is like a UK music legend, is Jermaine Riley, who used to be in the group Fundamental 03. He's like, they were like an R&B sensation in the early 2000s. He's got like encyclopedic Michael knowledge, so you should holler at him at some point. But anyway, I definitely look forward to it. You go do your Thanksgiving stream. I don't want to, because I will literally sit here and talk to you and mine your brain for information about Michael.
He just said, I interviewed Dawn Robinson from Invoke just last week, Tuesday.
Yeah.
That was
I saw that. They had the grey background, right?
Yeah, that's her car. She was in her car.
Oh, she's in her car. Okay. So she's actually in her car.
She's actually living it.
I thought that was just the press.
No, that's her in her car. And yeah.
Yikes. Okay. Yeah. Thank God for small mercies, as my mum says.
That's her in the car. So yeah. So anyway, I'll go do this, but I will get back in touch with you to say, so because we've done the official Black Ops stuff, then but it'll be on the music and stuff like that.
Let's do that. I'm more than happy. I hope this was fruitful and not too rambly for you.
No, good. As I said, there's so much I wanted to get, but I was like, oh goodness, I didn't realize that I'd scheduled the stream stuff.
Don't even worry about it. Yeah, that's all good. But yeah, just get in touch and we'll make it happen.
We'll do. All right, man. Natalie, I know you're off camera, but hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of Halftime Chat. Please remember to subscribe, share, and comment. But most importantly, why don't you become a member of Halftime Chat? We've got amazing videos, amazing perks, and being able to support the channel. But anyway, thanks for watching. Take care.
I never participated in that category.
And somewhere in between
us, or even loving us, on which I did miss you.
What was it like growing up?
She's still making an impact on 4 houses down.
I have a couple of pieces.
I didn't get this one and that one.
That works for you, but just for me,
No, okay.
They don't understand what Joseph boys win in all spirits. Play it.
These guys, they all work together.
I mean, I love all different jobs.